She walked into the courtroom already mid-argument, the kind of argument that had clearly begun somewhere else, perhaps in the parking lot, perhaps in her own head, and had now followed her through the metal detector, past the wooden doors, and straight up to the defense podium. The bailiff called her name, but she barely heard it. Papers flapped in her hands like restless birds. Her jaw was set, her shoulders squared, and the room felt smaller the moment she stopped moving. Judge Frank Caprio looked up from the docket, reading glasses perched low, and took her in with a calm, practiced glance. He didn't sigh, he didn't frown, he simply waited, as if patience were something you could lay on the bench and let everyone see. Her name was Melissa Harding, 39, charged with multiple citations, expired registration, failure to stop at a stop sign, and a speeding ticket stacked neatly behind them like an accusation with footnotes. She leaned into the microphone as though it had offended her personally. "Before we start," she said, voice sharp, "I want it on the record that this whole thing is ridiculous." Judge Caprio lifted his eyes, not to challenge her, but to acknowledge her presence. "Good morning, Miss Harding," he said evenly. "Let's take this one step at a time." "No," she snapped, turning her head toward the gallery as if inviting witnesses, "because every time I come here, it's the same thing. Nobody listens, I explain, and nobody listens." The judge folded his hands. "I'm listening." She laughed, short and humorless. "That's what they all say." The courtroom murmured. The bailiff shifted his weight. Caprio's voice didn't change. "Miss Harding, tell me what happened." What followed came out in a rush, words tumbling over one another, grievances piled high and held together by anger alone. She talked about being late for work, about a sick child, about a neighborhood that never plowed its streets on time. She talked about officers who waited like vultures, about a city that nickel and dimed people who were already drowning. Her finger jabbed the air with each point, the papers crinkling louder each time she shook them. She never quite answered the question, but she never paused long enough to be redirected. Judge Caprio let her speak. When she finally stopped to breathe, the silence felt deliberate. "Thank you," he said gently. "Now let's look at the facts." "That's the problem," she cut in. "You only look at your facts." He nodded once. "The law gives us a framework. Inside that framework, I can consider circumstances, but I need to understand the details. I told you the details. You told me how you feel. Both matter, but they're not the same." Her eyes flashed. "So now you're saying my feelings don't matter?" "I'm saying they do, and I'm also saying we have to talk about the citations." She scoffed, folding her arms. "This is a waste of time." Caprio leaned back slightly, not away from her, but to give the moment room. "Miss Harding, when people come in upset, it's usually because something else is heavy on their shoulders. Court just happens to be where it spills out." She stared at him, suspicious. "Don't psychoanalyze me." A faint smile touched his face, not amusement, but understanding. "Fair enough. Let's start with the stop sign." She shook her head. "I stopped." "The officer says you didn't." "Well, the officer is wrong." "Did you come to a complete stop?" "Yes." "How long?" "Long enough." He nodded, writing something down. "And the speed?" "I was going with traffic." "The posted limit is 25. Everyone goes 35 there." He looked up. "That may be true, but everyone else isn't a legal defense." She leaned closer to the microphone, voice rising again. "So what? I'm just supposed to be the one person crawling while everyone else flies by?" "I'm asking what happened," he said calmly, "not what everyone else does." Her shoulders slumped for a fraction of a second, then stiffened again. "I don't have money for this," she said, louder than necessary. "I work 2 jobs. I take care of my kid, and you want me to pay fines because some officer had a bad morning?" Caprio's pen paused. He looked at her fully now. "Miss Harding, I want you to hear me. I don't want to punish people for being poor." She rolled her eyes. "That's exactly what this is." "Listen to me," he said, gently but firmly. "If the law required me to ignore circumstances, I wouldn't be sitting here. I'm asking questions because your answers matter." The gallery quieted. Even the bailiff stopped shifting. She hesitated just long enough for the anger to waver. "Then why does it feel like you already decided?" "Because you came in ready for a fight, and fights are exhausting." Her mouth opened, then closed.
"You don't know me." "You're right, I don't. That's why I'm asking." She looked down at her papers, then back up, voice trembling despite herself. "I can't lose my license. I can't. If I miss work, I don't get paid. If I don't get paid, I can't pay rent." Caprio nodded slowly. "That's important information. So what now?" "Now," he said, "we slow this down." She laughed again, but this time it cracked. "Easy for you to say." He leaned forward, elbows resting lightly on the bench. "Miss Harding, my job is to apply the law with fairness. Your job today is to tell me the truth calmly enough that I can hear it." She looked at him for a long moment, as if weighing whether calm was something she could afford. The room held its breath. "Okay," she said finally, "then here's the truth." And for the first time since she'd entered the courtroom, her voice dropped and the story began to change.
She drew in a breath that sounded different from all the others she'd taken that morning. Slower, deeper, as if it had permission to exist. "The truth is," Melissa said, her eyes no longer darting around the room but fixed on the edge of the bench, "I didn't come here planning to argue with you. I came because I'm tired of feeling like I'm always one mistake away from everything falling apart." The words hung in the air, heavy but honest. "Every day feels like a calculation. If I'm late, I lose hours. If I lose hours, I can't pay something, and there's always something." Judge Caprio remained still, his expression unchanged, but the room felt like it had shifted to meet her tone. The bailiff relaxed his stance. The quiet was no longer tense, it was attentive. "When the officer pulled me over, I wasn't thinking about laws or limits. I was thinking about my son waiting at school, about my manager already annoyed with me, about how my car makes that noise again, and I don't know how much that's going to cost." She shook her head slowly. "So yeah, I got angry because it felt personal, even though I know it wasn't." Judge Caprio nodded once. "That happens more often than people admit." She glanced up, surprised by the lack of judgment. Encouraged, she went on. "I stopped at that sign. Maybe not perfectly, but I didn't blow through it. And the registration, I honestly forgot. I know that sounds careless, but when you're juggling everything, some things fall through." "They do," the judge said calmly, "but we still have to pick them back up." She let out a shaky laugh. "That's what it feels like I'm always doing." Caprio turned to the paperwork, reading silently for a moment, then looked back at her. "Miss Harding, the law exists to create order, not to crush people who are already struggling." He paused. "But it only works if we meet it halfway." She nodded quickly. "I renewed the registration as soon as I could." She stepped forward, hands trembling slightly as she passed the document to the clerk, who handed it up to the bench. Caprio reviewed it carefully. "You took responsibility," he said. "That matters here." Her shoulders dropped just a little, as if she'd been holding them up all morning without realizing it. "As for the speeding," he continued, "you said everyone goes faster on that road. That may be true, but speed limits aren't suggestions. They're there because someone once got hurt." His tone wasn't scolding, just factual. "So I can't pretend that didn't happen." She said, "I understand. I really do." He leaned forward slightly. "Tell me something. If I imposed the full fines today, would you be able to pay them?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "No, not without choosing which bill doesn't get paid this month." Caprio sat back, considering her answer. "And if I suspended your license?" Her eyes widened. "I'd lose my job. There's no bus route that gets me there on time." "Exactly," he said, "which would make everything worse." The courtroom stayed silent as he reached a decision. "Here's what we're going to do.
I'm going to reduce the stop sign citation. The expired registration is dismissed since you've already corrected it. The speeding violation will stand, but I'm lowering the fine and setting a payment plan that fits your income." Her face crumpled for a moment before she could stop it. She turned her head slightly, embarrassed, wiping her eyes. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have come in so angry." He smiled softly. "People don't come to court on their best days. They come when life corners them." She nodded, voice thick. "I thought if I didn't fight, I'd be ignored." "And I thought," Judge Caprio replied gently, "that if we slowed things down, we might actually hear each other." She looked at him fully now. "Thank you for treating me like a person." He inclined his head. "Just promise me one thing." "What's that?" "Slow down at that intersection," he said, with the faintest hint of warmth in his voice. "There's no ticket worth risking your life." A few quiet chuckles moved through the room. Melissa managed a small, genuine smile. "I will, I promise." As she stepped away from the podium, her posture was different. The defiance was gone, replaced by something steadier. She wasn't lighter because her problems had vanished, but because someone had acknowledged them without dismissing responsibility. Judge Caprio marked the file, called the next case, and the courtroom returned to its rhythm. Another name, another story, and another reminder that calm, when held firmly enough, can disarm even the loudest anger.